3 months on, the fighting in the east of Ukraine, particularly in the Donbas region, it's reached maximum intensity. This according to Ukraine's Deputy Defense Minister, who said on Thursday that Russia was storming Ukrainian troops from several directions here. Now, to get a sense of the current situation, on your screens right now, it's a map of eastern Ukraine. You can see that Russian forces, they're controlling much of the country's eastern Donbas region. The governor of Luhansk said that just 5% of the region now remained in Ukrainian hands. Fierce fighting has also been reported in the city of Severodonetsk and Izium. This is the town of Popasna in Luhansk region, once a town of 20,000 people. It's now a ghost town, with few residents still risking their lives daily by living under constant shelling. Ukrainian officials have said that advancing Russian forces, they came close to surrounding Ukrainian troops in the east, briefly seizing positions on the last highway out of a crucial pair of Ukrainian-held cities before they were beaten back. Meanwhile, 9 people have been killed, dozens injured in Russian artillery strikes in the northern city of Kharkiv. This is the first time Russia is targeting Kharkiv in 2 weeks. Just as life in Ukraine's second biggest city was beginning to return to normal, Thursday's attacks have raised fears that Kharkiv might still be on Russia's agenda. Here's the city's regional governor speaking about these strikes.
Обстріли ми мали через реактивні системи залпового вогню та артилерію. Це свідчить про те, що ворог знову підступно б'є по цивільному населенню, підступно тероризує його. Тому я прошу ще раз, без нагальних потреб не знаходитися на вулицях, дослухатися до сигналів протиповітряної тривоги та небезпеки, перебувати під час таких сигналів в укриттях.
In Kiev, Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky on Thursday accused Russia of carrying out genocide in Donbas. He said that Moscow's offensive could leave the region completely uninhabited. Listen in.
В містах і громадах ближче до кордону Росії, в Донецьку, в Луганську, вони збирають усіх, кого можуть, щоб заповнити місце убитих та поранених в окупаційному контингенті. Усе це, включно з депортацією наших людей і масовими вбивствами цивільних, очевидна політика геноциду, яку здійснює Росія.
Zelensky's accusations came as Finland's prime minister visited the towns of Irpin and Bucha, and where Russian soldiers have been accused Ukraine of committing war crimes. Pardon me. That is an allegation that has been denied by Moscow. Now, Prime Minister Sanna Marin said that Russia's actions in Ukraine, they've been a turning point for the world, and relations with Moscow will never be the same again. Ukraine, meanwhile, continues to ask for more weapons to fight its battle, and its requests are being met by the United States and allies who are providing Kiev with increasingly sophisticated arms. This has prompted Washington to discuss with Ukraine about the dangers of escalating the war further if Kiev strikes deep inside Russia. Compared to 3 months back, United States and its allies have been increasingly willing to give Ukraine long-range weaponry. This includes M777 howitzers, and the Pentagon also announced last week that Denmark will provide Ukraine with Harpoon anti-ship missiles. Such weapons will only increase Kiev's reach. Now, for more on this, we're being joined by our correspondent, Chris Jones from Riga, Latvia. Thank you so much for joining us, Chris. Can you bring us up to speed to begin with the developments on ground in Ukraine currently?
Yeah, well, over in the east, in the Donbas, in Donetsk and Lugansk, the situation still remains very perilous. We heard yesterday that 40 individual towns had been targeted by Russian artillery, and that has remained. The shelling, the constant shelling, has continued to rain down among those towns. We heard that 19 people had died in Donetsk and Lugansk, and a further 9 in Kharkiv, which you mentioned earlier, had not been attacked in some time. Now, Zelensky has accused Russia of wanting to burn the Donbass and to make it uninhabitable. And we've seen some evidence of that as well. The mayor of Severodonetsk, a city in the heartland of the Donbass, which is being encircled right now, the mayor of that said that around about 60% of the city's housing has been completely destroyed, and 90% of the buildings are damaged and will need major repairs. Now, there's around about 12,000 civilians still in Severodonetsk, and a further, more still in the Donbass, unable to escape, and that is really key. They are unable to escape. They've been told to stay in basements and bomb shelters because the shelling is so constant. Now, Russia has, throughout this war, denied having targeted civilians and civilian infrastructure, but we're seeing a trial going ahead at the moment in Kyiv, which directly contradicts that. We're seeing two Russian soldiers, Alexander Ivanov and Alexander Babikin, being trialled for targeting civilian infrastructure, and if they are sentenced to the maximum that they could receive, that could really damage Russia's image even further in this war.
Right, Chris, that being said, let's also talk about Ukraine's fight back in this now. Ukraine has asked for more military aid, in fact has been getting sophisticated weaponry as well. Now, how sustainable do you think the strategy will prove to be at a time when Russia is only mounting its offensives?
Well, it's difficult to really say. President Volodymyr Zelensky has said over the past few weeks or so that Ukraine simply just doesn't have the manpower or the weapons to be able to push Russia back in the Donbass, and we saw that with the taking of Mariupol as well. That Russia just basically had too many resources for Ukraine to be able to push them back. Now, we've heard Zelensky talk in Davos at the World Economic Forum. He said that if Ukraine had been given the weapons that they needed, all of the weapons that they needed back in February, then they might have been able to save more lives and potentially even win this war by now. Ukrainian military are saying that they're doing all they can to change the situation in the Donbass. They're trying to defend the cities of Severodonetsk as much as they can, but they're very aware that Russia is chucking all they can at this war, and it's making it very hard to make any positive counter-offences. But you're right, we've heard Western allies still pumping weapons into Ukraine. Zelensky, though, wants more, it seems.
Right, absolutely. Now, also another major point here, this is the first time that Russia is targeting Kharkiv as well in 2 weeks. Now, what does this say about Russia's ambitions at this point in the invasion of Ukraine?
Well, that's right. Kharkiv had been targeted by Russia previously, around about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Kharkiv, of course, being Ukraine's second city, its second largest city. There's thousands of people that live there, so it's a key strategic objective for Russia. The Institute for the Study of War said that Ukraine had managed to push Russia out of that city weeks ago and back to the border. Now what we're seeing is a almost refreshed attempt at pinning the city down, I guess you could call it. Commanders amongst the Russian ranks want to be able to show the Kremlin that they're capable of taking their military objectives, and I think that's what we're seeing in the targeting of Kharkiv here, and it's making it a very perilous situation for the civilians living there, because they thought the Russians had been pushed out, and now they seem to be back with constant shelling.
Right, you're absolutely right, Chris. These attacks do come at a time when the city was slowly trying to return to normalcy. With that, Chris, thank you so much for joining us with all the updates. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.